You're not family anymore." Those words hit me like a slap across the face at what was supposed to be the happiest day of my sister's life. I'm Madison, and I'm 32 years old, working as a marketing coordinator in Denver. What I'm about to tell you is probably the most humiliating experience I've ever had with my own family. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, please hit that subscribe button, because I promise this story gets absolutely wild. Stick around until the end, because what happened next completely destroyed her perfect wedding day. There I was, dressed in my best navy blue dress, clutching a gift that cost me 3 months of savings, being escorted to a table by the coat rack like I was some random +1 who crashed the party. But I wasn't a stranger. I was Sarah's older sister. The woman getting married in that beautiful white gown was my baby sister, and somehow I had become less important than the vendors setting up the dessert table. The venue was gorgeous, rolling hills in the background, white roses everywhere, string lights that probably cost more than my car payment. Sarah had always dreamed of this fairy tale wedding, and our parents had spared no expense. The guest list was over 200 people, but apparently there wasn't room for me at any table that mattered. "Excuse me, miss?" The wedding coordinator touched my arm gently. "You're Madison, correct? Table 12 is right over here." She led me to a small round table shoved into the corner near the coat check area. The tablecloth was wrinkled, there were only 3 chairs instead of the usual 8, and my table mates were the photographer's assistant and someone's elderly aunt who didn't speak English. I sat down slowly, watching as Sarah's new mother-in-law, Mrs. Patricia Williams, surveyed the seating arrangement with obvious satisfaction. She caught my eye and walked over with that fake smile wealthy women perfect over decades of country club meetings. "Oh, honey," she said in her syrupy southern accent, "you must be the sister Sarah mentioned. How sweet that you could make it." Her tone suggested it would have been even sweeter if I hadn't. "Don't worry about being back here. Only VIPs sit inside near the family tables. You understand." She laughed like she'd made some clever joke, but her eyes were cold as winter. I understood perfectly. In her world, and apparently in my own family's world, I wasn't a VIP. I wasn't even family. Growing up, I should have seen this coming. The signs were always there, scattered throughout our childhood like breadcrumbs leading to this moment of complete rejection. Sarah was born when I was 7, and from the moment she took her first breath, it was like I became invisible. Don't get me wrong, I loved my baby sister. When Mom brought her home from the hospital, tiny and perfect with wisps of blonde hair, I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I begged to help with feeding time. I sang her lullabies. I even gave up my favourite stuffed animal so she could sleep with it. But somewhere along the way, Sarah stopped being my little sister and became my replacement. It started small. When Sarah was 2 and I was 9, we both got the flu. Mum spent the entire week hovering over Sarah's crib, checking her temperature every hour, calling the paediatrician 3 times a day. I stayed in my room with a fever of 102, making myself soup from a can and watching cartoons alone. When I finally stumbled downstairs asking for medicine, Mum looked surprised, like she'd forgotten I was even sick. "Oh, Madison, honey, there's children's Tylenol in the medicine cabinet. Sarah's fever finally broke. Isn't that wonderful?" The pattern continued as we got older. Sarah's finger paintings went on the refrigerator. Mine went in a drawer. Sarah's soccer games were family events with Dad taking photos and Mum organising snack schedules. My volleyball matches were attended if they didn't conflict with Sarah's activities, which they usually did. When Sarah turned 8 and I was 15, she asked our parents for a birthday party. Not just any party. She wanted a princess theme with a bounce house, face painting, and a real horse for pony rides. The guest list included her entire second grade class, plus cousins and family friends. The cost must have been astronomical, but Dad just smiled and said, "Anything for our princess." 2 months later, for my 16th birthday, I asked if I could have a small party with maybe 10 friends, just pizza and a movie in our basement. Mum frowned and said money was tight after Sarah's party, and besides, 16 was too old for birthday parties. "Why don't you just go out to dinner with a few friends? Much more mature." I remember sitting in my room that night, watching through my window as Dad installed a new swing set for Sarah in our backyard. The old one was only 3 years old, but Sarah had complained that it was too babyish for her now. Meanwhile, I had been asking for a laptop for school for 6 months and kept being told we'd discuss it later. The laptop conversation never happened, but Sarah got an iPad for Christmas 2 months later. By the time I graduated high school, I had learned to manage my expectations. I was proud of my grades. I'd worked hard to maintain a 3.8 GPA while working part-time at the local grocery store to save money for college. The night before graduation, I overheard Mom on the phone with her sister. "Oh, Madison's graduation is tomorrow." "Yes, I suppose we're proud. She's always been so independent, you know, not like Sarah. Sarah still needs us for everything. Madison just handles things on her own." Independent. That was their word for neglected. Sarah was a sophomore when I graduated, and she was already being recruited by colleges for softball. She was talented, I'll give her that, but she was also getting private coaching 3 times a week and attending elite summer camps that cost thousands of dollars. When college scouts came to watch her play, our entire family would be in the stands with signs and matching t-shirts. I got into Colorado State University on academic scholarships I'd applied for myself, researched myself, and earned myself. The day I left for college, Mom cried because Sarah would miss me, not because she would. Dad helped me load my car with the minimum dorm supplies we could afford and said, "You'll do fine, Madison. You always land on your feet." College was the first time I felt like I could breathe. I made friends who appreciated me, professors who recognized my efforts, and slowly started to believe that maybe I was worth something after all. I called home every week dutifully, but the conversations always centered around Sarah's latest achievements or dramatic teenage crises that required all of Mom and Dad's attention. When I graduated college with honors, the ceremony fell on the same weekend as Sarah's state softball championship. Guess which event our parents attended. "We're so sorry, honey," Mum said over FaceTime the night before my graduation. "But you understand, this is Sarah's senior year, and she might get a full ride to University of Alabama if they win state. Your graduation will be recorded, right? We can watch it later." They never did watch it. After college, I moved to Denver and started building my career. I visited home for holidays and birthdays, always bringing thoughtful gifts and trying to maintain relationships with people who seemed to barely notice I existed. Every family gathering followed the same script. Sarah's life dominated every conversation while I sat quietly, occasionally asked about my job in the same tone people ask about the weather. When Sarah got engaged to Bradley Williams III, yes, the third, as his mother never failed to mention, the wedding planning became a full-time family obsession. For 8 months, every phone call home included detailed updates about flowers, venues, dress fittings, and catering choices. Sarah would text me photos of centerpieces and ask my opinion, but when I offered suggestions, she'd respond with, "Thanks." But Mom and I already decided on something else. I wasn't included in any of the actual planning. No dress shopping trips, no venue visits, no bridal shower planning. When I asked Mom about the bridal shower, she said it was going to be intimate family only, apparently a category that didn't include me. I found out later from Facebook photos that intimate family only included Sarah's 3 best friends from college, her sorority sisters, our cousins from Texas, and even Bradley's sister, who she'd known for exactly 10 months. The final blow came 3 weeks before the wedding when Sarah called me, her voice tight with stress. "Madison, I need to talk to you about something important." She sounded like she was reading from a script. Bradley's family is very traditional, and there are certain expectations for the wedding. We've had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list and seating arrangements. I waited, already feeling my stomach drop. "The thing is, Bradley's family doesn't really know you, and with all their relatives and business associates, space is really limited. We've had to prioritize people who are more central to our lives right now." "What exactly are you saying, Sarah?" "You're still invited, of course, but you won't be sitting with the immediate family. And there might not be room for you at the rehearsal dinner. It's just business associates and the wedding party, you know?" I sat in my apartment, staring at the wall, trying to process what my sister was telling me. "Sarah, I'm your sister. Your only sister." "I know, and I love you, but you have to understand. This isn't just about what I want. Bradley's family has certain expectations, and we can't afford to upset them. His father owns half the banks in Alabama, and this marriage is about more than just love. You've always been so independent anyway. I knew you'd understand." There was that word again, independent. "Where exactly will I be sitting?" "There's a lovely table near the back. You'll barely notice the difference." But I did notice the difference. I noticed every single detail of how I'd been systematically erased from my own sister's wedding. I noticed how my 3 months of savings, money I'd carefully set aside to give Sarah and Bradley the honeymoon trip to Italy they'd mentioned wanting, suddenly felt like a joke. I noticed how I'd been transformed from sister to stranger in the span of one phone conversation. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my hotel room and stared at myself in the mirror. I'd bought a beautiful navy dress, gotten my hair professionally styled, and wrapped my gift with expensive paper and a silk ribbon. I looked like someone attending a family wedding, but apparently that's not what I was doing. I was attending the wedding of 2 people who had decided I didn't matter enough to include in their happiness. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I have to admit. Sarah looked stunning in her designer gown, and Bradley seemed genuinely happy. I sat in the very back row, behind people I'd never seen before, and watched my baby sister promise to love and honour someone who clearly considered me unworthy of a seat at the family table. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, I tried to approach Sarah to congratulate her. She was surrounded by a cluster of Bradley's relatives, all of them dressed in outfits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When she saw me approaching, her smile flickered just slightly. "Madison, you look so nice," she said, but her voice was strained. "Everyone, this is my sister Madison." The introduction was perfunctory, like I was a distant acquaintance she felt obligated to acknowledge. Bradley's aunt looked me up and down with obvious assessment and found me lacking. The conversation continued around me as if I hadn't been introduced at all. That's when I realized something that should have been obvious all along. I wasn't just being excluded from the important moments. I was actively being hidden. Sarah was embarrassed by me. In this new world she was entering, a world of country clubs and charity galas and business connections, I was a liability. I was the sister who worked a normal job, lived in a normal apartment, and wore dresses from department stores instead of boutiques. I was a reminder of the middle-class family she was trying to distance herself from now that she was marrying into money. The realization hit me like cold water. All those years of being treated like an afterthought suddenly made perfect sense. It wasn't that our parents loved Sarah more, though they certainly acted like it. It was that Sarah was everything they wished they could be: beautiful, charming, destined for a life of luxury and status. I was just Madison, independent, reliable, forgettable Madison. As I stood there in my navy dress, holding my expensive gift and watching my sister laugh with people who would never know my name, something inside me finally snapped. Not in anger, exactly, but in clarity. I was done. I was done being the sister who understood. I was done being the daughter who didn't make demands. I was done being the family member who could be forgotten, ignored, and excluded without consequence. I was done being invisible. The moment that changed everything came during dinner. I was sitting at my table by the coat rack making polite conversation with the photographer's assistant about lighting techniques when I heard Mrs. Williams talking to someone at the neighbouring table. "Oh, that's Sarah's sister," she was saying, her voice carrying clearly in the space between tables. "Sweet girl. But you know how it is with families. Some people just never quite fit in with the right crowd. Sarah's trying to maintain relationships, of course, but there are certain standards to consider now." The woman she was talking to, presumably another member of Bradley's extended family, nodded knowingly. It's difficult when people don't understand their place. At least she seems to know she doesn't belong at the important tables. They laughed together, the sound sharp and cutting across the ambient noise of the reception. That laugh was the sound of everything I'd endured for 32 years, crystallizing into one perfect moment of understanding. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't oversensitive. I wasn't imagining the slights and exclusions. I really was being treated like I didn't belong in my own family. But here's the thing about reaching your breaking point. It's actually liberating. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely clear about what I needed to do. I looked down at the beautifully wrapped gift sitting beside my purse. Inside that elegant box was a confirmation number and payment receipt for a 10-day honeymoon trip to Tuscany. I'd booked it through a travel agent, researched the best hotels, and even arranged for wine tastings and cooking classes. The total cost was $8,000. Money I'd saved by skipping vacations, eating ramen for lunch, and driving my beat-up Honda instead of buying something newer. I'd spent 3 months planning the perfect gift for my sister's perfect wedding. But as I sat there listening to her new mother-in-law explain to strangers why I didn't deserve respect, I realized something important. Strangers don't give gifts to people who consider them strangers, and family members don't treat each other like strangers. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my dress and picking up my purse. The photographer's assistant looked up at me curiously. "Excuse me," I said politely. "I need to handle something." I walked across the reception area, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The sound seemed unusually loud in my ears, like the universe was announcing my approach. I could feel people starting to notice my movement, the way I was walking with purpose instead of slinking around the edges of the party like I had been all day. Sarah was at the head table, laughing at something Bradley's best man had said. She looked radiant and happy, surrounded by people who mattered to her, people who weren't me. I approached the gift table, where dozens of elegantly wrapped packages were displayed. Mine was easy to spot. I'd chosen distinctive silver paper with a burgundy ribbon, and it was one of the larger boxes. "Excuse me," I said to the young woman who was apparently in charge of gift security. "I need to retrieve my gift." She looked confused. "Oh, I'm sorry, but gifts aren't usually taken back during the reception. Is there a problem?" "Yes," I said clearly, my voice carrying further than I'd intended. "There's been a misunderstanding about my relationship to the bride. I need to correct that mistake." Conversations around us began to quiet as people sensed drama developing. I could see heads turning in our direction, including Sarah's. Her face had gone pale, and she was half rising from her chair. I picked up my gift and held it against my chest like armor. The weight of it, of all that money and effort and love I'd poured into planning their perfect honeymoon, felt different now. It felt like evidence of how foolish I'd been. "Madison?" Sarah's voice was uncertain, almost frightened. "What are you doing?" I turned to face her, and suddenly the entire reception area was quiet, except for the string quartet playing softly in the background. Everyone was watching now. The bride's family, the groom's family, all their friends and business associates. Perfect. An audience was exactly what this moment needed. "I'm correcting a misunderstanding," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You see, I brought this gift because I thought I was your sister. But I've been informed that I'm not actually family. Mrs. Williams explained it very clearly. I don't belong at the important tables because I don't fit in with the right crowd." Sarah's face flushed red. "Madison, please, you're misunderstanding." "Am I?" I interrupted, "because for the past 8 months you've excluded me from every single wedding event. The dress shopping, the venue visits, the bridal shower that was intimate family only, but included sorority sisters and friends I've never met. You seated me at a table by the coat rack with strangers and told me it's because Bradley's family doesn't know me." My voice was getting stronger now, fed by 32 years of swallowed words and accepted dismissals. "You called me 3 weeks ago to explain that I'm not central to your life, that I don't matter enough to sit with immediate family at your wedding, that I have to understand my place, which is apparently nowhere." The silence was deafening now. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, sensing that this was not background music territory. "So I'm taking back my gift," I continued, "because strangers don't leave presents for people who don't consider them family. And you've made it very clear that whatever I am to you, it's not family." Sarah was crying now, mascara starting to run despite the waterproof promises of her makeup artist. "Madison, please, you're ruining everything. This is my wedding day." "No," I said firmly. "You ruined it when you decided I wasn't worth including in it." I turned to face the crowd of shocked wedding guests, many of whom were still holding their champagne glasses like they'd been frozen mid-toast. "For those of you who don't know me, I'm Madison. I'm Sarah's older sister, though apparently that's not common knowledge. I helped raise her, supported her through high school, and have spent my entire adult life trying to maintain a relationship with someone who considers me an embarrassment." Mrs. Williams had gone completely white. She was staring at me like I was a natural disaster she couldn't quite believe was happening. "I brought this gift because I love my sister and wanted to contribute to her happiness. Inside this box is a fully paid honeymoon trip to Italy worth $8,000. I spent 3 months of my salary on it because I thought that's what family does for each other." Sarah made a small, desperate sound. "Madison, stop. Please just stop." But I was done stopping. I was done being quiet and understanding and invisible. "But I've learned today that family is something I'm not considered to be. So I'm taking this gift with me because strangers don't leave expensive presents for people who seat them by the coat rack and laugh about how they don't belong." I looked directly at Sarah, my baby sister who had grown up to be someone I didn't recognize. "You wanted me to understand my place, Sarah. Well, I finally do. My place is anywhere but here. The silence that followed my words was so complete I could hear the ice clinking in someone's abandoned champagne glass 3 tables away. 200 people stared at me like I was a car accident they couldn't look away from. The only sound was Sarah's quiet crying and the distant hum of the air conditioning system struggling against the Georgia heat. Then, like a dam breaking, everything happened at once. "Oh my God," someone whispered from the Williams family table. $8,000? She paid for their honeymoon? Another voice asked, slightly louder. And they put her by the coat check. The murmurs started rippling through the crowd like wildfire. I could see guests leaning toward each other, sharing shocked expressions and raised eyebrows. Several people were looking back and forth between my table by the coat rack and the head table where Sarah sat frozen in her wedding dress. Mrs. Williams shot to her feet, her face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "Now you listen here, young lady. Patricia, don't." The voice came from an unexpected source, Bradley's father, Mr. Williams, who had been silent through my entire speech. He stood slowly, his expression grave. "Let her finish." I hadn't expected an ally from that quarter, but I wasn't about to waste the opportunity. "I'm already finished," I said, clutching the gift box tighter. "I've said everything I came here to say. Sarah made her choice about what kind of sister she wants to be, and I'm making mine about what kind of treatment I'm willing to accept." Sarah finally found her voice, though it came out as a desperate whisper that somehow carried across the silent room. "Madison, please, don't do this. We can talk about it later, after the wedding. Please don't ruin this for me." The word ruin hit me like a physical blow. Even now, even after everything I'd just explained, she was making this about her comfort, her perfect day, her reputation. Not about the years of exclusion and dismissal, not about the pain she'd caused, just about how my reaction to her treatment was inconveniencing her. "I'm not ruining anything, Sarah," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "I'm just finally responding to how you've treated me. If that ruins your wedding, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't worth a seat at the family table." I turned toward the exit, but Mrs. Williams stepped into my path. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the fury in her eyes. "You selfish little girl," she hissed, her Southern belle accent dropping to reveal something much uglier underneath. "Do you have any idea what this wedding cost? What it means to our family? You're going to destroy Sarah's reputation over hurt feelings." "Hurt feelings?" I repeated, incredulous. "Mrs. Williams, you literally told me only VIPs sit with the family, and you laughed about it. You told strangers that I don't know my place and don't belong with the right crowd. How exactly is that just hurt feelings?" The colour drained from her face as she realised I'd overheard her earlier conversation. Around us, more murmurs erupted as guests processed this new information. "She said what?" someone asked loudly. "That's horrible," another voice added. "Who treats family like that?" Mr. Williams cleared his throat, and the authority in the sound commanded immediate attention. "Patricia, is this true? Did you say those things?" Mrs. Williams looked around the room desperately, as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "William, you don't understand the context." "The context," interrupted a new voice, "is that y'all treated this girl like garbage at her own sister's wedding." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was an elderly woman I didn't recognize, wearing a lavender dress and a pearl necklace. From the family resemblance, I guessed she was one of Bradley's great-aunts or grandmother figures. "Meemaw," Bradley started, but she held up a jewelled hand to silence him. "Don't you meemaw me, Bradley Charles Williams. I raised you better than this. Your mama might put on airs, but I know good manners when I see them, and this ain't it." She looked directly at me with kind eyes. "Honey, what's your name again?" "Madison," I said, surprised by the gentleness in her voice. "Madison, I'm Eleanor Williams, and I want you to know that not everyone in this family agrees with how you've been treated. A woman who saves up $8,000 to give her sister a dream honeymoon is the kind of family anyone should be proud to claim." The validation from this unexpected source nearly broke my composure. Here was someone who understood, someone who saw the situation clearly, but it was too little, too late. "Thank you, Mrs. Williams," I said sincerely. "That means more than you know. But the damage is done. Sarah made her feelings about our relationship very clear, and I'm finally accepting them." Sarah stood up so abruptly, her chair nearly fell over. "That's not true. I love you, Madison. You're my sister. I never said I didn't want you here." "You didn't have to say it," I replied. "You showed it. With every decision you made about this wedding, with every event you excluded me from, with the table assignment by the coat rack, with your phone call 3 weeks ago explaining that I'm not central to your life." I could see our parents near the head table, looking stricken and confused. Dad started to move toward us, but I shook my head. "No, Dad, don't. You and Mom had 32 years to figure out how to treat both your daughters equally. You chose Sarah every time, and that's fine. That's your choice. But I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt." Mom's face crumpled. "Madison, honey, that's not—" "Mom, stop!" My voice was firm but not angry. "Just stop. When I graduated high school with honors, you went to Sarah's softball game instead of my ceremony. When I graduated college with a 3.8 GPA, you missed that too for Sarah's state championship. When I got my first promotion, you forgot to call me back because Sarah had broken up with her boyfriend and needed to talk." The list of forgotten moments hung in the air between us, each one a small wound that had never properly healed. "I understand now that Sarah has always been your priority, and I've made peace with that. But I'm not going to keep showing up to be ignored and excluded. I'm worth more than that." Bradley, who had been silent through most of this exchange, finally spoke up. "Madison, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we can work this out." "Bradley," I said, not unkindly, "you seem like a decent person, and I hope you and Sarah are very happy together. But there's no misunderstanding here. Your mother made it very clear that I don't belong in your social circle, and Sarah agreed by seating me accordingly. You're marrying into a family that has one daughter they're proud of and one they're embarrassed by. Today just made that official." I looked around the room one more time, taking in the faces of 200 people who had just witnessed the complete breakdown of a family relationship. Some looked sympathetic, some looked uncomfortable, and some looked like they were mentally taking notes for the gossip they'd share later. "I'm going to leave now," I announced. "Sarah, I hope your marriage brings you everything you're looking for. I hope Bradley's family connections and business opportunities make up for losing the sister who would have loved you unconditionally forever." Sarah's mascara was completely ruined now, black streaks running down her cheeks. "Madison, please, we can fix this. Don't leave like this." "There's nothing to fix," I said sadly. "This is who we are to each other now. You made that choice." I started walking toward the exit, my heels clicking against the marble floor in the absolute silence. Every step felt both empowering and heartbreaking. I was finally standing up for myself, finally refusing to accept crumbs of affection and respect. But I was also walking away from the only family I'd ever known. "Wait!" The voice belonged to Eleanor Williams, Bradley's great-grandmother. Madison, honey, wait just a minute. I stopped and turned back to her, curious about what this dignified elderly woman could possibly want to say. She walked over to me with surprising speed for someone who had to be in her 80s. When she reached me, she spoke loudly enough for the entire room to hear. I want you to know that I have 4 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren, and not one of them has ever given a gift as thoughtful or generous as what you planned for these 2. The fact that you're walking away with your dignity intact tells me everything I need to know about your character. She turned to face the crowd, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived through the Depression, World War II, and 8 decades of family drama. I've seen a lot of weddings in my time, and I've seen a lot of family foolishness, but I've never seen a bride's family treat her sister with such disrespect at what should be a celebration of love and unity. This young woman saved for months to give them a honeymoon they'll never forget, and Yul repaid her kindness by treating her like hired help. She looked directly at Mrs. Williams, her daughter-in-law, with obvious disapproval. Patricia, you should be ashamed of yourself. And Sarah, honey, you're starting your marriage by throwing away one of the most precious things you'll ever have. A sister who loves you enough to bankrupt herself for your happiness. That's not the kind of woman I raised my great-grandson to marry. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Sarah had stopped crying, apparently shocked into stillness by this unexpected rebuke from Bradley's family matriarch. Eleanor turned back to me with a sad smile. Madison, I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry these people don't appreciate what they had in you. But I want you to remember something. Their inability to value you doesn't decrease your worth. You walk out of here with your head held high. Thank you, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. That means everything to me. I hugged this wonderful woman I'd just met, breathing in her powder and perfume scent while trying not to cry all over her lavender dress. When I pulled back, she pressed something into my hand, a business card. That's my personal number, she said quietly. If you ever need someone to remind you that you matter, you call me. Blood doesn't always make family, but love and respect do. I looked down at the card, then back up at her kind face. I will. Thank you for being the only person in this room who treated me like I belonged here. As I turned to leave again, the spell of Eleanor's intervention seemed to break. Sarah lurched forward, her wedding dress trailing behind her. Madison, I'm begging you, please don't do this. Please don't leave like this. We're sisters. We're supposed to be there for each other. I stopped walking, but didn't turn around. We were supposed to be there for each other, Sarah. But you decided I wasn't worth including in the most important day of your life. You decided I was an embarrassment to your new social status. You decided I didn't belong at the family table. I finally turned to face her one last time. The sister who would have stood by you through anything is the same sister you seated by the coat rack. The sister who saved for months to give you a perfect honeymoon is the same sister you excluded from every wedding event. You can't have it both ways. But I love you, she said desperately. I know you do, I replied sadly, but love isn't enough when it doesn't come with respect. Love isn't enough when it doesn't come with inclusion. Love isn't enough when it's conditional on staying quiet and accepting whatever crumbs of attention you're willing to give me. I held up the gift box one more time. This represented 3 months of my life and a significant chunk of my savings. I gave it freely because I love you. But you've made it clear that you don't value sacrifices like that, so I'm taking it back. Maybe someday you'll understand why. With that, I turned and walked out of the reception hall, leaving behind the sound of Sarah's renewed sobbing and the uncomfortable murmur of 200 wedding guests trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The lobby of the country club was blissfully quiet after the chaos of the reception. I sat down on an ornate velvet chair and finally allowed myself to breathe. My hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline, but I felt clearer than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I thought it might be Sarah or my parents, but it was from my best friend Jessica back in Denver. "How's the wedding? Send pictures of you looking gorgeous." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Wedding's over for me. Long story. Heading home tomorrow." "Everything okay? Call me when you can." I looked around the empty lobby, then back toward the reception hall where I could still hear the distant sounds of music and conversation. The wedding was continuing without me, which was probably exactly how Sarah had planned it all along. My phone rang, and I saw my dad's name on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Madison! Honey, where are you? Can you come back inside so we can talk about this?" "Dad, there's nothing to talk about. I said everything I needed to say in there." "But sweetheart, this is Sarah's wedding day. Can't we work this out after—" "No, Dad, we can't work this out after. We've had 32 years to work this out, and it's only gotten worse. I'm not going to keep pretending everything is fine just to maintain the illusion of family harmony." I could hear voices in the background. Mum crying, Sarah saying something I couldn't make out, other people talking all at once. "Madison, please, come back inside. We'll figure out a different seating arrangement. We'll make this right." "Dad, you can't make this right with a different seating arrangement. This isn't about where I sat. This is about who I am to this family, and that's not something you can fix with a gesture." "What do you want us to do?" he asked, and for the first time in our conversation, he sounded genuinely desperate. "I want you to understand that I'm done," I said quietly. "I'm done being the daughter who doesn't matter as much. I'm done being the sister who's only included when it's convenient. I'm done accepting less than I deserve because it's easier than making waves." "But we're family." "Are we, Dad? Because family doesn't treat each other the way I've been treated today. Family doesn't exclude each other from important events. Family doesn't laugh about how someone doesn't belong." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the words I was about to say. "I love all of you, but I'm done trying to earn my place in this family. I'm done begging for the respect and inclusion that should have been given freely. Sarah made her choice about what kind of sister she wants to be, and now I'm making mine about what kind of treatment I'm willing to accept." "Madison, honey, please don't do anything permanent over one bad day." "Dad, this isn't about one bad day. This is about a lifetime of bad days. This is about 32 years of being second best, second choice, second priority. I'm finally choosing myself first." I could hear Sarah in the background, still crying, saying something about how she didn't mean it, how she could fix it. But we were past the point of easy fixes. "Tell Sarah I hope she has a wonderful marriage," I said. "Tell her I hope Bradley's family gives her everything she's looking for. And tell her that when she's ready to have a real conversation about how she's treated me, not just today, but for years, she knows how to reach me." "Where are you going?" "I'm going home, Dad. I'm going back to Denver, where I have friends who value me, a job where my efforts are recognized, and a life where I don't have to apologize for existing." I hung up before he could respond and immediately turned off my phone. I wasn't ready for the flood of calls and texts that would inevitably follow. The drive back to my hotel was surreal. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, hardly believing I'd actually done it. For 32 years, I'd been the peacekeeper, the understanding one, the sister who accepted whatever role was assigned to her. Today, I'd finally said enough. In my hotel room, I carefully placed the gift box on the bed and opened it. Inside were all the confirmation papers for the Italian honeymoon, hotel reservations at a luxury resort in Tuscany, first-class flight tickets, restaurant reservations, wine tour bookings, cooking class confirmations. I'd planned every detail to be perfect. I pulled out my laptop and began the process of cancelling everything. Most bookings had a 48-hour cancellation policy, so I'd get most of my money back. The flights were non-refundable, but I could change the names for a fee. Maybe Jessica and I could take a girls' trip to Italy instead. As I worked through the cancellations, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was just free. Free from the constant disappointment of hoping this time would be different. Free from the exhausting work of maintaining relationships with people who didn't prioritize me. Free from the guilt of never being grateful enough for the scraps of attention I received. My phone, still turned off, sat silent on the nightstand. I knew it was probably full of messages by now. Apologies, explanations, demands that I come back and fix what I'd broken. But I wasn't ready to hear any of it. Instead, I ordered room service, ran a hot bath, and for the first time in months, allowed myself to imagine a future where I didn't spend every family gathering feeling like an outsider in my own family. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and drove to the airport with a heart that felt lighter than it had in years. As my plane lifted off from Atlanta, carrying me back to Denver and the life I'd built for myself, I thought about Eleanor Williams's words. Blood doesn't always make family, but love and respect do. I was flying home to friends who valued me, to a career I'd built through my own efforts, to a life where I mattered. I was leaving behind people who shared my DNA, but had never learned to treat me like I belonged. For the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself first, and it felt like coming alive. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever realized that the people who should love you unconditionally have been treating your love like it's worthless? Share your story in the comments. You're not alone in this. The truth is, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who refuse to value you. Sometimes protecting your own heart means refusing to keep breaking it for people who don't appreciate the sacrifice. Blood doesn't make family. Love and respect do, and you deserve both.